Hello everyone, I'm Sarah and welcome back to my channel. I had plans, to brainstorm and outline and then start writing my new project, Project Grey, in November. Because NaNoWriMo turned out to be a total bust, I'm going to be doing the 100k Q4 instead, which pushed up my timeline. Which means now instead of starting on the 1st of November, I'm starting on the 1st of October, which gives me a little less than 2 weeks to outline 40 odd chapters worth of story. Did I want more time than that? Yes. Do I feel like I'm going to push myself to do this outline before the deadline and it turn out to be not so good? It's a possibility, but we are going to be using my new plot outline, the ladder method. I will link the video in which I go through that down below if you're interested, in order to do the outline for this story. I'm determined to make this work. I'm determined to write a good outline that will not have me adding things and making stuff up and getting stuck much. I want everything where it needs to be. I want all of the details for all of the chapters, and I can add in little bits if I choose to. That is the plan. So today we are going to start doing that. I don't know how I'm going to start doing that. I don't know the best way in order to do the outline, because I've never used this particular way or used the Everything Project Bible things I've created in order to put everything into the outline, world building, characters, etc, etc. And I've got a 34-page Google Drive doc which covers a lot of plot from book 1 and book 2 and book 3. And also a lot of notes on characters and world building and the actual plot itself, which I also need to wade through in order to do this. So I don't quite know where to start, but we shall give it a go and see how well it works. I am initially thinking I'm going to start with the traffic light method. Obviously I'm doing that for everything. For outlining, which is these lovely 2 pieces of paper here. For the outline, I'm being so specific. We're going to start with the red section, the basic section, which is roughly, hopefully, around 100 words worth of outline per chapter, in which the main focus contains the purpose of that chapter. I'm going to be outlining the purpose of that chapter. And then, depending on what the scene is and what I already know and what I've already created and thought of in my Google Drive doc, we're going to add another 200 words, which includes any information that the characters find out, whether that's about other characters, whether that's about plot, etc, etc. And then if we're really going to go in depth, we're going to do 500 words, including everything we are going to learn about the characters, including their arcs, their subplots, and any world building of importance or things of note that have already been created via the world building system. That's what we're going to focus on. Am I going to word count 100, 200, 500 words? No. Do I want to sort of roughly have that much information for each chapter? Yes, I do. The more information I have, the less I'm going to be able to make stuff up as I go along. And then we just have the little versions of it here. So we're going to start with the purpose. So what is the main point of this chapter and how does it move the plot forward? Whether that is moving the plot forward character-wise or moving the plot forward through actions, whether that's active, reactive, plot things happening on the outside that the characters can't control. This paper is wobbly. 200 words about what information that we learn, and is there any foreshadowing or subplot within that chapter that I can make note of and ensure that it links and is fulfilled later on in the story. I've split the green into 2, 400 words with what do we learn about the characters and how does their arc move forward in each of the chapters, and then 500 words with what elements of world building do we learn and what history of the world is established. Again, the more little bits of information I put into the story, the less likely I am to randomly make something up on the fly and then have it ruin something or make something inconsistent or make me have to change something too much because now it doesn't fit in with what I originally had in my head. We want to try and avoid that as much as possible. But also along with those, I do need to sort of, if it calls for it, be working from, if I can find anything that I have in my folder, which I don't think I do, anything that we can from the world building pages, if I come across something in regards to that. If I do happen to make something up while I'm outlining, I can add it into my pages to keep note of it. We want to be working from, I haven't actually labelled any of these sections, so trying to find what I want isn't actually really helpful at all. And we're also going to be looking at the character toolboxes as well. Who's that for? That's Romy. And sort of referencing this in regards to their arc, their personality, etc., etc., and making sure what we have in here already is put into the chapters, and then anything new that I happen to think of for each of the characters, whether that is their personality, their history, any of these that I haven't sort of filled in, like the highs and lows of their impossible choices. If I come across that or think of that while I outline, again, I can add it in. It's a lot of organisation. It's too much organisation at the moment, if I'm being honest, but this is what my brain has sort of come up with. I also need to make sure that even if I'm not physically filling in the timeline that I have prepped, which is me being completely unorganised, Sarah, how dare you. If I'm not physically filling in the timeline, so I can keep track of how many days have passed per chapter, on here I am sort of making note of it in the chapters as I go to sort of keep that consistent and shuffle things around if absolutely necessary. I'm also going to be taking note of, hopefully, the subplots for all of the characters that happen to be going on, and questions I need to answer. If something comes up in the outline or plot that I'm like, oh, but then how did that happen? Questions I need to answer. And somewhere here, I've lost it, there's another page. Also want to keep track of the minor characters that pop up in the outline. I know I've got a few in my head at the moment, and just keep track of how they specifically affect the plot, any information they specifically give, again, so I can reference back, and who they give that specific information to. Because sometimes a minor character is going to give information to the non-POV character. So it's going to be helpful for me to know that this specific character knows this specific piece of information and will act in a certain way, but the reader and the protagonist, or the POV character, does not know this piece of information. We're keeping track. Again, I might not write it all down in a book for now, but I will have to sort of keep note of that as I go, just to get everything sorted. I'm going to go through my Google Drive. I'm going to go through all of the plot that I have on the Google Drive. I'm going to get my outline, and I'm going to put all of the events that I know are going to happen into the 32 chapters, and we'll go from there. I have already set up my Butterdocs with the outline that I have. So we have the 4 acts. We have 8 chapters in each act, and then this is extra. This is the 9 days that Nola was queen for, and they are going to sort of be interspersed within the plot itself. So while I have 32 chapters of plot, I also have 9 chapters of backstory to shove into places as well. The main thing I want to focus on at the moment is these here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these. I'm going to find the plot points that I've already come up with, and I'm going to very quickly dump them into place and then fill in all of the gaps that I have. Almost immediately, I've come across an issue. It's not an issue with the actual outline itself, thankfully. It's an issue with my over-eagerness and inspiration, and how it's done too much work before I got to this point. The ladder method is supposed to aid with creating an outline for the story, as in creating the plot. And each of the stages, the beats, the chapters, gives you a specific moment or a specific thing to focus on in each of those spaces. I have been sort of brainstorming this story for a very, very long time now, with the 34 plus pages I have in my Google Docs. And I've already sort of come up with a plot for the story. I know where it starts, I know what they do, I know the midpoint, I know the darkest moment, I know how it ends. And now trying to put all of that into that outline, as opposed to using the outline to create those moments, from an outside point of view, the pacing feels really off, which is what I wanted to avoid, which is an issue. Like, it's an issue of my own creation. If I had not have already plotted so much, this wouldn't be an issue. And I could happily put things wherever I wanted to put them and come up with everything normal pacing wise. But because I've already got this specific way of everything going, I'm struggling to fit it in the correct places while still trying to keep the pacing decent. On page, it looks like the pacing is off. Once everything is written, maybe the pacing won't be off. I won't know that until I've physically written the book itself. But on page, because I pre-planned everything stupidly, the pacing looks off. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So I'm gonna go back through my Google Drive and I'm gonna see if there's anything there that will inspire me to fill in a few of these bits that I'm missing. See if I can sort of jiggle some things about to make them fit a little better. And let's hope it works. Okay, I have managed to put stuff into each of the chapters. Again, the pacing does feel a little bit off, but that's nothing that I need to be too worried about until everything is written. Some of the chapters are just going to have to be super, super, super long chapters in order to fit everything that I wanted to fit in to everything before we go. Oh, I haven't filled that one in. Oh, no, where's plot? Is it in plot or is it in book one? Because I'm going to be working from so many different places in order to try and do this outline, the world building pages, the character toolboxes that I've done, the Google Drive that has all of the information in it, I think what I need to do is make a note of all of the important things I feel like I'm going to need in each chapter, what the main point is for each chapter, what information we learn in each chapter, the character arcs, world building. So there's nothing important that I'm forgetting before I start properly outlining, because everything is so higgledy-piggledy in the Google Drive. And because I don't want to have to be flicking through my folder consistently, always person, character, which is the same as person. In order to do this, I think if I had everything specifically written down that I need before I start outlining, I know that I'm going to put in all of the important things that I immediately think of that I need in the chapters. Okay, and get some tea and probably food as well. We'll need to do that. Okay, that's first things first. I gave up doing that. This is all trial and error because I'm doing this the wrong way. I filled everything out. I didn't fill everything out, that was a lie. I planned everything. So we have each of the chapters and then they've got 4 spaces for the 4 different bits that I need to fill in for everything. And I've done most of the first act. That was more or less easy enough. And I've done part of the second act. I've done all of the second act and then haven't sort of done the third or fourth, because it sort of got to a point where Again, very, very little. It sort of got to the point where I was just like, well, I don't know what character arc moment we're going to find in this. I don't know what piece of world building we're going to see in this. So I'm not there yet. I don't know. And it was too difficult to think of things to specifically put in there. And so I just stopped because it was difficult. I thought it was a good idea. I did okay with it. I did maybe half an hour's worth of doing that. And then I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not going to help me out. I don't know that it's not going to help me out. It could help me out. I feel like it's not going to help me out. And I'm feeling cooped up in the house. So lucky me, I didn't make tea. I forgot to do that. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go to a coffee shop. And hopefully the new environment is going to help me do stuff. And by doing stuff, I mean start outlining some of this stuff. Of course, the day that I want to go out and sit in a coffee shop is the day that I had to go to 3 different coffee shops to try and find one that had space in order for me to sit down and write. Because the first 2 I went to, completely full, no seats. One of them had a massive queue and no seats. So I was just like, nope, we're not going to do that. I walked around, had a little self-care writing day, looked at all of the beautiful mugs and things in HomeSense. Didn't buy myself a single thing. I bought a child a birthday present while I was there though, and managed to find a place to sit at the very last coffee shop I tried, which I'm so glad I did, because I did not want to have to leave the area I was in order to find a different coffee shop, because I have 3 in one area, which is fantastic. I had something in my head that I was going to talk about. What was I going to talk about? What was I going to talk about? The issue I'm currently having. I know what I'm doing. The issue I'm currently having is, and it's not really an issue, I'm just thinking it's an issue when it's most probably not an issue, is trying to make sure there's something interesting happening in each of these chapters. So we've done all of Act 1. Act 1, perfectly fine. I like how it goes. I like what we know. I sort of like the pacing of it. It works. And then as we get into Act 2 and the start of the journey, a lot of things sort of happen at once, but the first couple of chapters and the first half of the 3rd chapter are not action chapters, they're more talky chapters. Nothing major happens. The beginning of Act 2 is a reaction to what happens at the end of Act 1. So at the end of Act 1 is the big thing that happens. Act 2, it's the reaction. And then we move on. And then we move on to the journey. I'm starting to talk too fast now. And then we move on to the journey, which is the official start of their journey, which again is more of an establishment chapter. And then we get into the reminder. But before we get into the reminder, unless I push the lab back and we get there at the end of journey. Ooh, could we do that? We could do that. No, don't get sidetracked again. And then the beginning of reminder currently is mostly talk. And then the big thing is going to happen at the end. And then we're going to go into challenge, which is some other big thing that they discover that they have to overcome, which leads them to a realization, which I haven't filled out still. And then we move into headway, which is another issue. So I feel like the first 3 chapters, how they are at the moment, is a lot of talky rather than interesting. But I feel like I'm going to have to try and make it interesting through character rather than through action, which I hope will keep it interesting. Which is, okay, these are the things that are going through my head, right? This is one of the issues that I had with outlining in the beginning. This need to action, because action is interesting, right? Something interesting has to happen. It needs to be action. That's what I have in my head. So that's why it's always so difficult for me to outline. I'm using this to try and force myself to not do that and make the chapters interesting and push the plot forward in other ways that is not something happens or the characters react to something. The characters need to do something interesting to make them act to go into the next big action fight thing that happens. That's what I'm trying to force myself to do with this. But everything in my head is like, no, it's not interesting. It's not interesting. But I don't know that now. On paper, it might not seem interesting. I don't know if it is going to be or not until I write it. Can't write it until I outline it. So I'm going to stop talking. You love the British ramble. Don't pretend you don't. It's a really terrible look into my brain. Currently on the lab. I've written quite a bit for the lab. I just need to see where I end it. And there's a few bits in my Google Drive in regards to the action part that I want to add into this as well. Think about the possibility of putting the beginning of the lab at the end of Journey to sort of make the lab not end up being such a big chapter, and then move on to the challenge and the realization, which are those two chapters which I sort of have something for, but they're not fully formed yet. And I need to put them in a way that's not so repetitive, similar to what happens in Headway moving up to midpoint. Okay, that is what we're going to do. Guess who just had an idea for something to do? And even though I won't need any of this for the story itself, now I'm planning to do it, which unfortunately is me doing full scenes of stuff that we're not going to see in the story, but will matter to certain characters. There I was, just happily going through my book one stuff, trying to find a specific piece of something which I swear to God I've written down. But I feel like I've written so many things down that I can't ever find again. And there's a few bits in here that I'm reading, like when this happens in the story that we see, this is what this other character is doing at the time, again to keep consistency, to add to foreshadowing, plot, subplot, character arcs and stuff for future books. And I was like, oh, written here, which I've forgotten, which I had forgotten that I had done. On my way to work once, I sort of had this scene in my head, which was a scene involving the antagonist, which doesn't need to be in the book because she doesn't have a POV, in regards to her discovering something. And I wrote down that scene in book one in my Google Drive. And literally my head just went, we need to write all of these scenes out now. We need to physically write these scenes. I don't need to physically write these scenes. I can note down that this is what she had. I can't speak. I can note down this is what this character did at this time and this is what this character learnt. And my ADHD went, oh, you could write the actual scene. Or you could just write the entire scene. I give myself more work, thanks ADHD, I guess. So now I'm doing that. I have a section in my Everything Project Bible specifically for noting down things the characters learn outside of what the reader knows and outside of what the protagonist knows, again in order to inform decisions, in order to sort of explain or at least so I know personally why they know pieces of information, so I can sort of link back to the foreshadowing and subplots and character arcs in future books. I know when this thing took place. Now apparently I'm writing the scenes themselves, which will help explore those characters a little better, I guess, but why do I need to write things that I'm not going to use? Unless I decide to turn this into a multi-POV, which I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do that. I don't have a desire to do that. For my own personal use, I guess. Why, brain, why? Now my brain has gotten very caught up with the timeline because I made the mistake of changing what I was doing and thinking to myself, let me figure out this timeline. And now it's doing math and working out how long does it take to row 35 miles. And with my ruler and my map, measuring the distance that I have between things and going, oh, so it would take them 4 hours to go through a hike through the woods, which means that it's 4 hours later than it was at this chapter, which means it's this time. And because now I'm losing focus. And I'm doing math, which I hate. Don't. This is my process. This is why I don't get stuff done. Yet another change of scenery, because I needed to get myself out of that house in order to stop doing all of the math. So nature and sunshine, I guess, and a notebook to try and work out what exactly it is I want to happen in the next 2 chapters that we are doing. Okay, I had an epiphany as I was walking home, and words, sentences of a scene started popping into my head for realization. And I get home and I'm like, right, okay, realization chapter, let's go. And it doesn't fit into the timeline that I just had in my head, or at least an aspect of the scene, which is annoying. Okay, you know what, hang on. It can work. If I remove the beginning of realization and add that to the end of challenge, to close out challenge, and then move, okay, that's fine, that works now. It works now. So basically, I'm just going to stop talking to write this down, otherwise I'm not going to get the words I have in my head onto the page. But outdoor, yay, works, fun. I have the introduction to the scene now. I sort of have how it's going to go, and I can work on that with the elements that I just thought of that I can bring in, which will sort of help form a stronger base for what happens towards midpoint and in midpoint, and then further into the story. Yes. Stopped to record, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, I'm done. I can think no more. We're done for the day. My hair is a mess. We managed to get through 12 chapters though. 12 chapters, a fair decent amount of outlining in all of them, including bits I'm going to need for character, which I can expand upon at a later date, but they've all got a very firm foundation. They've all got a main point. They've all got things that they learn, and they all fit in with whatever the chapter requires based on the outline. So I'm happy. I'm happy with the work that I've managed to put in today. I honestly didn't think I would get through so many chapters so quickly. Yes, it helps that I had quite a bit of the plot already figured out for myself, but having the sort of core element of each chapter sort of prepared for me, this is a challenge, this is a realization, this is debate, this is a recovery, really helped me pinpoint what it was I needed in that specific chapter. And I could form plot around that. I could separate big scenes and situations I had in my head into the correct chapters in order for them to sort of fit into what was needed. I've never outlined this fast before. But again, it does help that I've got quite a bit of the plot already sort of set in my head. But still, I'm happy. I'm happy with the work. It might not take me as long to outline all of this as I feared it would. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to do like 2 chapters a day in order to get everything done by the 1st of October. I feel confident now that I can get everything done decently and still have time to go back and add detail to specific elements in each chapter regarding character, especially in character arcs, without rushing too much to hit that deadline and without half-assing anything before I start writing. So yeah, I feel good. We're good. Being out twice today also helped, so yay for fresh air and sunshine, I guess. The next 2 chapters I've got for Act 2, which is the next 3 chapters I've got for Act 2 actually, is 13. Have I done 13? I've done 13 chapters because 13 add 3 is 16 and there's 16 chapters in Act 1 and 2. Done 13 chapters. The next 3, I sort of know what's going to happen in them. I know the main point, but there's a lot of, they go off and they search and they find this. What is this? How does that search go? There's a lot of detail and context I'm missing from the events that I have planned for those 3 chapters. So that's going to be interesting to work on, and hopefully I'll be able to manage figuring that out relatively quickly, and then we can move past midpoint into Act 3 and a brand new queendom. We are moving away from Cophelia, the flower queendom, and moving into Faldone, the river queendom, which is a whole new set of world building and characters I'm excited to explore. But we need to do this bit first. But we have time, we're good, we can get it done. That's everything for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.